Hello. Okay, let's get back to reading Simone Weil, The Need for Roots. I promised I would do this. I'm really going to try to not comment. We're going to start at chapter 1. I'm going to make this as smooth as possible, but I do have ADHD, so I kind of comment on the middle. So, starting first chapter, Simone Weil, The Need for Roots. I may do we're not going to do the introduction, it's very long. The concept of obligations takes precedence over that of rights, which are subordinate and relative to it. A right is not effective on its own, but solely in relation to the obligation to which it corresponds. The successful fulfillment of a right comes not from the person who possesses it, but from others who recognize that they have an obligation towards that person. So basically, Simone Weil is saying that obligations are more important than rights, and rights are supposed to submit to obligation, which I do not agree with, because I don't believe that people are free thinking enough to decide what a natural obligation is. And if you have no religion or no God, then you do not have an obligation. You only would have an obligation to your fellow man. And even so, if you were convinced that you have an obligation to your fellow man, that could be error. So I'm just going to keep going. It makes no sense to say that people have rights on the one hand and duties on the other. The terms express only differences of opinion. Their relationship is that of object and subject. A man, considered on his own, has only duties, including certain duties towards himself. As I said in the video I took down, a man would have duties toward himself if he's on his own. He would have the duty to keep himself alive. He would have the duty to treat himself decently. But those are duties also which can be twisted by culture, by time, and by everything else. People can say whatever they want. We live in a world now where everybody is correct on what a right and what a duty is. We can't adopt a universal Bill of Rights because it would always be trampling on the rights of one people group. So do you understand what I mean by that? The notion of being of an objective order cannot be separated from that of existence and reality. It appears when obligation descends into the realm of fact, and therefore always takes into account to some extent states of affairs and particular situations. Rights always appear to be associated with certain conditions. Obligation alone can be unconditional. The domain of obligations is situated above all conditions because it is above this world. Now, when Simone Weil says that, we know that that is her religious beliefs coming into being. Now, every religion has their own set of religious beliefs. However, every religion does believe that there's something more, right? That there's something more. I wouldn't call it heavens and the earth, but that man has more substance. How do we know, though, however, if something above this world, not everybody has that inside of them according to certain religious documents. Therein lies a problem. The people of 1789 did not recognize the existence of such a domain. They only recognized that of human matters. That is why they started from the notion of rights. but at the same time, they wanted to lay down absolute principles. This contradiction resulted in a confusion of language and ideas, which is largely responsible for the current political and social confusion. Now, I can see how there would be confusion of language and ideas because you literally, if you ever study linguistics, you can say something in one language and mean it to be something in your own language, and it can be something absolutely and completely different to you. Do you understand what I mean? So this whole thing, we're gonna debate this whole thing, I'm sure. Obligations are only binding on human beings. But is nature obligated to obey? Is nature obligated to obey? What word am I thinking of? Anyway, there are no obligations for collectivities as such, but there are obligations for all human beings who make up, serve, command, or represent a collectivity, both in part of their lives that is tied to the collectivity and in that which is independent of it. Identical obligations bind all human beings, even though they correspond to different actions in different situations. No human being, whoever they are, can escape them under any circumstances without committing a crime, except in cases where, if two real obligations are incompatible, they are forced to relinquish one of them. The imperfection of social order is measured by the number of conflicting situations it contains. Okay, so it would be real nice of us as the human race at this moment in time, and Americans, to be considering the actions of our politicians, because apparently they have an obligation to the collective. However, in their obligation to the collective, they are not obligated to us. They have considered their own obligations. They're just doing whatever the hell that they want without the consideration of the implications of their actions. We have a big problem. This is a problem as old as time. What do we do about it? As old as time, as old as culture, as old as the sun. And what is this called in religious circles? I'll give you a moment. So I'm reading just that much today. We will continue with Simone Weil again, possibly tomorrow. I plan on not working tomorrow because my body needs rest. I am having a lupus flare-up, so I'm medicated. Have a nice day.